Are you dreaming of a white Christmas? Many times it's just a dream, because most times we don't get snow for Christmas here in the South, specifically in Arkansas. But every once in a while, we'll get lucky and we'll get some snowflakes flying around either a couple days before Christmas and it sticks and it stays, and sometimes on Christmas morning, or maybe we have to wait, maybe more like Christmas evening. But first off, we have to kind of answer the question, like we're just talking about, what is a white Christmas? Because everyone has a different opinion on this, and that's okay. However, from a record-keeping standpoint, we need a set standard so that we can look at every single year and have an official tally, because we've got to have some official numbers at some point. But I do think there's a little bit of wiggle room, because there's several Christmas mornings where we've had still a dusting left over from a previous snow, or we had an active snow forecast, but just a dusting fell in the first place. That's all we got. Some of us, me probably included, I consider that kind of a white Christmas. But what does the National Weather Service think? Because that's the official source. 1 inch of snow. That's what it takes. We've got our handy dandy ruler right here. 1 inch of snow, Christmas morning. So there is actually an observer at these sites across the United States that will make sure there is an inch of snow there. If there is, it's added to the tally. If you have 0.5 inches of snow, technically it's not a white Christmas. National Weather Service will make a note of it, but it will not be included in the official record. So what have we gotten here in Arkansas? We've had a few. Even over the past couple of decades, we've had a couple. But we're going to look over the past 100 years on how many white Christmases we have. All the data is below in an article, or you'll see the article where you are, depending on what platform you're in. So all the data is below, but we'll take a closer look at a few things. Before we jump into Christmases of old, let's talk about the chance of white Christmas here at home. These are the percentages. You can also look at these not just as a 2% for Jonesboro, but 2 times every 100 years, you could have a white Christmas. That's another way to look at it, just how you want to break down your numbers. Best chance of a white Christmas is in northwest Arkansas. The farther north you go, of course, just generally you are colder. Also, the terrain helps in northern Arkansas to try to get that white Christmas effect. Also in the Ouachitas, we don't have very many observing sites south of Fort Smith, but on the tops of some of these mountains, you can also get maybe a little bit of a higher percentage of a white Christmas. You're looking at this thing right here, and you see these blue colors. We don't have any of the blue colors here in Arkansas because we don't even hit the 10% threshold. Now, we used to. What the National Weather Service has to do in order to be congruent with the World Meteorological Organization standards of a white Christmas all across the world, so an international standard, we have to set these new normals every 10 years. It's over the past 30 years, but every time you get towards the census, you've got to kind of redo the data a little bit. You cut off the oldest decade and you add the latest information, the latest decade's information. And so these things have changed. In fact, the last time before 2020, we had percentages closer to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% in northwest Arkansas. So we haven't seen as many white Christmases here recently, but we've had a couple, and we want to highlight those. Before we highlight those, here's another way to look at just white Christmases across the U.S. You see those blue zones. Boy, it gets close to Arkansas. We just don't have that 10% threshold anymore. You got to go north. Once you hit about Joplin or so, you do have the chance of maybe at least a 10% chance of a white Christmas. If you want at least a 50-50 shot, generally half your Christmases are snowy or they're white, or you had some snowstorm and the snow's still left over. You've either got to go to the Rockies or you've got to go to the far north, so far northern plains, North Dakota, Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, or you got to be close to a lake effect snow belt. So Michigan, but especially off of the northern end of Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. Or you head to the northeast, either just far to the north, or you got to get in contact with Lake Ontario's lake effect snow belt. They're just north of Syracuse. And then the Adirondacks, and then getting in some of the higher elevations of New England, north of the Green Mountains, and into parts of Maine. That's where you've got to go. But here in the South, it is very hard for us to get a white Christmas. So we've had a couple Christmases where they have been white. I'm going to back this up for a second. I want to show you what it looked like for December 22nd and December 25th to 26th of 2012. Let's take a closer look at this. Here is December 22 of 2022. This was last year. So if you're watching this for 2023, this was last year. If you remember, we had a huge cold air outbreak, smacked us. Temperatures below zero. The hog statue there on the U of A campus completely froze over. It was so cold. We had pipes bursting. It was, from a cold standpoint, it was not good. But we did pick up some snow for the northern third of the state. So by the time we got to Christmas morning, because this is a couple days before Christmas, by Christmas morning, we still had a dusting kind of in place. So some folks remember it still as it was a cold Christmas and it was kind of white, especially if you live north of Fort Smith. If you live anywhere else, definitely not a white Christmas. It was still on the chilly side. This technically does not go into the official record because most of it melted by the time we got to Christmas morning. But there were some dusty patches across the northern third of Arkansas. So there was that one. But the last big white Christmas we had was 2012. And not all the state got it, but for western Arkansas, right into Fort Smith, south into the Ouachitas, Hot Springs, right through Conway, Russellville, Little Rock, and then northeast, we had Searcy, Jonesboro, Benton, Arkansas. We picked up some good snowfall anywhere for the central part of the state. If you go extreme far south, no snow for us, unless you count southwest Arkansas, there in Texarkana. We got a little bit of snow. In fact, we got a couple inches of snow. Northwest Arkansas, interesting enough, did not have a white Christmas in 2012. There were snow showers on Christmas, and we may have picked up about a ½ inch or so, so there were dustings in place. But for that 1 inch mark for the white Christmas, that was to the south. You had to go south of Greenland, there towards West Fork and Winslow, Huntsville, and south towards Japton, and the tops of White Rock Mountain, and just all the way through the Boston Mountains, we had some of that snow. But the big time snow, over a foot of snow in places, fell just north of Little Rock, Conway, Searcy. That was a good Christmas. Now, I'll shut things down because that was just a lot of snow. Thank goodness Christmas is a little bit slower in general, but that was maybe a little bit too much snow from an economic standpoint. But good white Christmas there, December of 2012. That was the last one. If you want to see other Christmases that we've had them all below where we've listed out different events. Sometimes we've had that inch threshold and we could check it off, and sometimes we were not able to. Those are all listed below. Check them out. But we've had a decent amount of wintry Christmases in the past 100 years.